Welcome, everybody. Again, I'm Captain Dave here with the Atlantic Cup sailing race and the Atlantic Cup Kids program. And today I've got Joe Harris with me, a great friend, fellow competitor in the Class 40 class. And Joe and I sailed against each other in a couple of Atlantic Cup races. And we also sailed together on Joe's boat in the Marblehead Halifax race. And Joe, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Captain Dave. Good to see you as always. And glad to be doing this interview with you.
Great, great. So, Joe, you've sailed the Class 40 for quite a few years and against a lot of the fun competitors from around the world. You got any thoughts for the young folks today about that?
Well, as you know, the Class 40 is an awfully fun boat because it's really just, it's like a 10-foot dinghy blown up, right? A big, fat, planing hull that likes to go fast downwind mostly. And so when we put the big spinnakers up and get a good breeze, the boat can really take off and fly. And that's really fun and really exhilarating. So that's probably why we're all drawn to the Class 40.
And so, you like we both harbored the dream of sailing single-handed around the world. And in fact, we were both listed to race the Global Oceans race when it got set aside. We both subsequently went around the world by ourselves. So you got a few points about that you'd like to talk about?
Well, yeah, I think you and I are pretty unique, I guess, in that, as you say, we were both ready to go off and do a race against other Class 40s, and then the race didn't happen. So first you and then me decided to go around anyway. I think you did it more as a world tour, stopping more often and checking out places around the world. I did it as a record attempt, trying to beat a record of 137 days set by a Chinese sailor named Guo Chuan, and doing it solo nonstop. I wasn't able to do that. I had a couple problems and breakdowns with the boat. So I had to stop once in Cape Town, South Africa, and once in Punta del Este, Uruguay, but did make it around in 152 days and was very happy just to make it around alive and in one piece, as you were, I think.
Yeah, it's hard for people to imagine, first of all, sailing around the world by yourself, but second of all, trying to do it nonstop. Now, there's a great French race called the Vendée Globe where they do it in 60-footers, but those are much larger boats. So these 40-footers we did it in are that's pretty extreme, crazy stuff. And to attempt to do it nonstop was even a higher limit than I was willing to go for. But when a lot of what we're concerned about, because I know you and I and the other competitors in the Atlantic Cup race, we all kind of focus on the environment and cleaning the ocean, and that's our playground, really. When we're on our boats, we can go anywhere in the world. Did you notice the same sorts of problems with the environment and the climate change that I did, where storms seem to be sometimes unique, a little heavier than normal? And any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the temperature of the ocean is warming, and I think that's been tied fairly directly to the increase in hurricanes, which have come up through the Caribbean and into, Florida and the southern states here in the United States. So I think, like you, I experienced more turbulent weather, more rapidly changing weather, more extreme weather. And I think that is, a byproduct of, global warming and the warming of the oceans. So, just more volatile, I guess, is the way I'd put it.
Yeah, I found the same thing. It was quite fascinating because I worked with a weather router. I think you did too, to a certain extent. And I advanced my learning knowledge of weather and stuff much more than just watching the morning news. But for the young kids at home, the weather's pretty important in our day-to-day life. And for sailors like you and me, we're actually kind of embedding, which means we're like closely tied in with the environment, the sea, the ocean, the weather, and these things are pretty important to us. Did you see some fun animals, some fun wildlife along the way?
Yeah, I did. Lots of dolphins, which are my favorite animal of them all, because the dolphins always have that nice smile on their face, and
Right, they do, yeah.
yeah, they always seem to be in a good mood and happy, and they come and play in the bow wake of the boat, and they come in packs of anywhere from 2 to 30, and they stay around for a while and they say hello, and then just as quickly as they came, they zip off in another direction, and it's moms and dads and babies and kids and the whole family. They just seem to be a very happy species, and always gave me a big upward lift in my outlook every time they came and visited.
I had the same experience, and then there was one night when I was sitting there watching them just before sunset, and then they took off, like you say, they just wandered off into the horizon. I thought, God, how much fun to have this entire ocean as your playground. And I realized that's what we have, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really true. But as I say, they'd come completely unexpectedly. They'd stay for a visit, and then they'd leave just as quickly. And where they were going, I don't know. But they've got their own navigation, which I have a feeling is a lot better than our built-in navigation.
Yeah. Did you see any sharks or whales out there?
Yeah, but not very many. I had a little bit of this phobia about swimming. So even when I was becalmed, I would go swimming, but I swam pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Because I was always worried about a shark. But I didn't see too many. When I did, I would get a little scared to see that fin coming by. It's a kind of a scary looking thing, and sometimes I would, mistake a whale for a shark, but the whale's obviously way bigger and in a sort of a different fin profile. But both of them are out there. I didn't see them all that much.
Well, I think the routes and the times that we went were not real consistent with the whale migration, so we weren't really in sync with them. I have been to other parts like off of Cabo San Lucas in Mexico and the North Atlantic as well, where we've seen quite a few whales on the trips. But one of the fun things for me, the first time I ever saw a whale spout, where it sprays up into the air, the water and stuff like that, I thought, my God, that looks exactly like it does illustrated in the book Moby Dick. Did you notice the same thing? I mean, it's a pretty distinct when they spout.
It's amazing, and I've actually seen quite a few whales just sailing up and down the East Coast here, particularly in Stellwagen Banks, which is not
Sure.
off the coast of Massachusetts here by Cape Cod. But I remember distinctly being very close to a whale when it spouted, and how I not only saw it, but it smelled.
Oh. Hadn't brushed his teeth lately, huh?
I don't think that whale had brushed his teeth, and he had kind of bad breath. Yeah.
So now you mentioned the banks there. Now that's a really important whaling area, and there's a lot of work done to protect the whales there, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of attention being paid these days to the northern right whale, the North Atlantic right whale, which is an endangered species. There's only less than 400 of them remaining, and they are the mothers are not giving birth, or calving, as I think they call it, nearly as much as they need to be to keep the species going. And what's happening is these whales are getting either hit by boats and damaged by the propellers or the collision, or they're getting tangled in lobster pot lines. And so I've been working with a group, the Mass Lobstermen, who are experimenting with a couple of different things. One is lines that are not as strong. So if the whale swims into it, it could break the line and not get caught in it. And the other is simply less lines, more traps, more lobster traps on one vertical line. And both of those are designed to help the right whale, which I really hope that we can help to remain and grow as a species.
And don't they also have some warning buoys and stuff out there where if they hear the whales and they they warn the ships that they're in the area, and the ships are required to slow their speed down, aren't they? And provide a closer watch to try to avoid the whales.
Yeah, I was particularly hearing about that in Nova Scotia, coming in and out of, I guess, towards Halifax, that or up into the Bay of Fundy, that ships they go into an area of whale migration, and they're alerted that they have to bring their speed down. I forget what it is. It's maybe 8 or 10 knots down from 16 or 18 knots.
Yeah.
So that they can see the whale, or maybe get out of the whale's way.
Yeah.
So
Joe, you've spent a lot of your life on the ocean. You're very intimate with the ocean and the sea. You were a commercial fisherman for a while too, so you've seen both sides of the ecological argument of sustainability, sustainable fishing, and overfishing and stuff like that. And, this is a big concern. We want to make sure there's plenty of fish left for the young kids when they grow up. If I remember right, you were a salmon fisherman in Alaska, was it?
Yeah. I fished for 8 summers in Bristol Bay, Alaska, which is way up north. The innermost part of the Aleutian chain is Bristol Bay, and that fishery is very well regulated by the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, meaning that they're very careful to get a certain number of salmon up the river to spawn every year, so that when they come back on their 4-year cycle, they go from where they're born, they go out the river, out into the Pacific Ocean in a great big circle, and then back to the exact place that they were born, which is really cool. But it's the largest run of salmon in the world, and they've made very sure that they get enough salmon up the river every year to keep the species going, and in fact growing. So that's been an example of great fisheries management. I think here in New England, from Massachusetts or Connecticut, Rhode Island up to Maine, the regulation has not been as good. The fish stock has been depleted, and then they have to close fishing completely for a while, and that of course hurts the fishermen very badly. So it's both the lobstermen and the fishermen don't seem to really like the regulation, and the regulation hasn't been near as effective in prolonging the species.
And that's I think that example in Alaska is a great example of sustainability, where you're taking a small portion to feed families and stuff like that without harming the overall population of the salmon, and that's a good thing. Now here on the Great Lakes, I have the same lifelong relationship with the Great Lakes that you have with the ocean, and though I never did any commercial fishing or whatever on the Great Lakes, but we've had to curtail perch fishing because it had become overfished and unsustainable, and now they just allow it as private fishing. So
right.
These are all great things that I know you and I both, dear in our hearts, worry about and work to promote the sustainability of the ocean and taking care of our environment. And like I suggest to these young kids, growing up to be a good steward of the environment, and the ocean's an important thing. And could you maybe define a good stewardship of the ocean?
Well, I think it's always being aware of what you're doing and the impact that it might have on the environment. I know when the Atlantic Cup first began, it was Juliana and Hugh that quickly adopted the practices of Sailors for the Sea and their Clean Oceans program. And I remember at the beginning going, what do you mean I can't have my single serve plastic water bottle, and changing your way of thinking to think about being more environmentally sensitive and the concepts of sustainability. It took a while for me to get it. And I really take my hat off to Hugh and Juliana and Sam, the leaders at the Atlantic Cup, and to you now, Dave, picking up the mantle for leading the way on that, and always being at the very top of the heap of the Clean Regatta program that has about 25 different bullet points, from using biodiesel to not using straws or balloons or any kind of plastic stuff, and all of the concepts that they put into place, cleaning your boat with products that don't harm the water. And so if you just begin to get into that mindset, then everything that you do, you think about what the impact is. And if you're thinking that way, then you're going to make smart decisions that benefit the environment.
Yeah, very much so. And one of the things that that's always attracted me to sailing was I felt that as I passed through an area in the boat, and all boats leave a wake, but our sailboat wakes are very, very small, and they, I noticed sailing around the ocean, there were always birds flying behind me, and they would weave back and forth, and I always envisioned they were just kind of sewing up the wake behind me, and and leaving no trace, which is something I was, trained on as a very young man. To, if you went camping into the woods, you came out, the woods looked like you were never there, and I think that's what you're talking about a lot.
Well, it is, and I know, I know that you did the Outward Bound program.
Right.
Were you in the program up at Hurricane Island in Maine?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that one of their core concepts is leave no trace, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
as a camper in the woods, when you make a fire, you put that fire out and you disperse everything, and any trash that you make, you pack out, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you do the same on the boats, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. The only stuff we throw overboard is really, just food that hopefully the fish would like.
Yeah.
But anything plastic or, of that nature, we would keep and put in a bag and take off the boat when we got to our destination.
Well, great, Joe. This has been a great conversation. It's so good to see you again. I know we're quite a ways apart. You're in the Boston area, and I'm out in the Indiana in the Great Lakes area. But what's neat about that is we both consider the world our playground, and we cross paths quite a bit and race against each other and race with each other. And in this overall game plan of trying to help kids and educate kids and share our views on sustainability, we're aligned on the same spaceship here, Earth, traveling through the universe. So thanks so much for your time.
It's a great analogy, Dave. It's a real pleasure to be here with you. I hope our paths cross this summer and we can do some sailing together.
Sounds great. Thanks so much. Captain Dave and Joe Harris signing off here for the AtCup Kids program.